So the first thing I'm going to show you is how to put the canvas onto a frame. Now I am using an Elbesee Easy Clip frame, and I also have here an Elbesee Twizzler. These are what I recommend. These are what I use for all my tapestry stitching. We have them in the shop. We stock 2 sizes. I've got the larger size here. I really recommend these ones because they're easy to use, easy to clip into. The reason, firstly, just in case you don't know whether to stitch on a frame or not, if you stitch on a frame, it is much easier to maintain the tension. And whilst you are working on a coated canvas, which maintains its structure quite well, because the Woolies end up using longer stitches, if you're working loose, you're more likely to end up pulling the canvas in a bit too tight and shrinking down the overall design, struggling then at the end to be able to stretch it out. So personally, I find it much easier to work on a frame because it means, number one, I don't worry about the tension as I'm stitching. I know that the frame is doing the job of maintaining the tension of the canvas. But secondly, I also personally find it much easier to work on a frame. I feel like my hands almost claw up a bit if I'm holding a loose canvas. I find it personally much easier. So I'm going to show you how to mount up on one of these. If you're not going to use a frame, then you can just skip this section. So firstly, what's in your box? In your box, you'll have 2 large sticks, each with clips on them, 2 shorter sticks like these, a little bag of bolts, and then you will have also an instructions guide on how to set it up. Now I'm just going to show you how to set it up here without needing that. So all I'm doing is I'm going to clip these clips onto the end of my frame. Doesn't matter which way round you put them on. Personally, I'm just going to clip one side on and not going to clip both sides on. I'm then going to get out my canvas, and because later in the video I'm going to be showing you how to stitch sections of Sovereign of the Sea, I'm going to be using my Sovereign of the Sea canvas. So my canvas here is a bit smaller than my frame. So probably if I was working this one, normally what I would actually end up doing is using the slightly shorter frame. This is a 24 by 9 inch frame. I would tend actually on a smaller canvas size like this to work on an 18 by 9, and that's the other size we stock. Now there is no reason for that other than it's slightly smaller, slightly easier to carry around, but if you only want one frame, people tend to buy the bigger size because it means you're likely to be able to fit every canvas you're working with onto the frame. So all I'm going to do is open up my design. You can see what I'm going to end up doing is working my design horizontally. So I'm going to kind of work across and roll across. That is just because it's such a long design. If I tried to work vertically, I would need such a big frame. It would be completely unwieldy. So I'm going to first up, I've got one side here mounted, take my clip off. Now, if you ever find your canvas is slightly too big for the frame you've got, you absolutely can trim down your canvas. And you really only need sort of 10 holes, you need 1 inch to be able to make your canvas mounted after. So if you do cut it down, that's okay. Try retain as much of the loose canvas as you can, because you can always cut it down later, but you obviously can't add it back. So it doesn't matter which way you attach your canvas here to the frame. What I'm going to do is go down to the bottom because I just want to make it as straight as possible. So I'm going to pull my edge of my frame along and I wrap my piece round so I feel like the holes are kind of all in a straight line, and then I clip my clip into place like this. And then this one has multiple clips, so I'm going to then put my next one on. Again, keeping it straight as possible. Next one on, and then my final one. And you'll see if you've used cat frames before and you've ever done ones, a lot of people, traditionally the frames used were stitch-on ones. This is so much easier. So, I've got one side done. What I'm just going to do is just clip on my other side before I attach my frame together. It's much easier to do this before the frame is attached. Take the clips off. And again, I'm going to wrap it up around. And again, what I want to do is just try I'm going to take it right down to the end because I'm going to want to make sure when I end up having this long that my canvas is straight. And part of the reason I took mine right to the end before is because I knew that was a kind of nice straight position. So I'm taking it right down to the end. Give myself a bit of canvas. Get my lines straight with the holes. Here we go. And then the first clip goes in. So take it right to the end. First clip goes in once I'm straight. And take your time over this. Once you've got it mounted up, you're not going to be taking it off again. You could be working a canvas for, over a year. It's worth getting it right. I've done this a lot of times, so I'm quite quick at sort of straightening it up. If you haven't done it that often, you might want to take a bit more time over it. And one more. This one went slightly on a wonk. Put it slightly in, slightly further. Okay, so I've got both my sides attached. Now I'm just going to clip and push this in. So you see it's straight along the bottom, and I'm going to roll. Rolling until it's tight, and I can see the section where I'm going to want to start my stitching. Now I get my bolts, so I'm going to just cut this open and just show you how to put the bolts on. So you'll see the way I've wound mine is so that the canvas is actually sort of on the lower half. Rather than sitting forward, it's sitting at the bottom. As you roll it, you'll have two choices. You either roll it so the canvas is at the front or at the back. I personally prefer this way. It's the way my granny kind of showed me how to do it. And part of the reason she always said to do it that way is because if you put it in your bag or something, you have a slight level of protection on the stitching. Whereas if the stitching's sat forward, when you've got this rolled edge, that's always your front side of your stitching. Whereas if you have it this way, that's always the back side. So you have a bit of protection. It really doesn't make a difference, and there isn't particularly a right way or wrong way. Likewise with where your wing nuts end up going, whether you have this bar on the front or the back doesn't matter. So don't worry too much about how you're setting up. But what you're going to do is I'm going to put my bolt from the back here, and I'm going to just loosely attach in my wing nut. And I'll just do the same at this bottom end. Right side, and attach in my wing nut. Likewise here, both bolts. And loosely put my wing nut on. So these are all really loosely attached in now, and what you want to do is you then need to twist them in tight enough so on this bolt side it pushes the square section into the wood, and that's how you make your frame really tight. Now I'm quite strong and I cannot do this alone by my hand. It just won't pull it all the way in. So what I use is one of these Twizzlers, and these really are, if you're going to be doing a lot of tapestry stitching, they just make your lives so much easier. So all I'm going to do is now just tighten and I'm tightening it so that it's pulling the bolt fully the way into the wood on the reverse. I'll show you the difference. So you see here, on this side, here the bolt is sitting so it's protruding. On this side, the bolt's been pulled in so it's actually gone into the wood. So I'm just going to repeat that on all of the bolt corners. So I've now got these all really tight. Now my canvas is actually still a little bit loose. So what I'm going to do is now, once they're all tight, just loosen them a little tiny bit. And I'm just going to loosen actually this one side. And with that other side, it's absolutely locked tight. So I'm now going to pull this one in as hard as I can and then tighten these again. And you can see now my canvas is much tighter. That's how I want to work, that's how it's most satisfying, and that's how you're going to ensure that as you stitch, you maintain the tension of your piece.